Okay. So today we're going to talk about taking risks and failing forward. And this is a topic that took me a long time to master, the fear of failure. So I'm going to start off with our 6 basic fears. We have the fear of poverty, the fear of criticism, the fear of ill health, the fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and the fear of death. And today we're going to talk about the fear of criticism. To find yourself successful, then you really must understand and know yourself accurately. You need to believe in your dreams passionately, never give up. You must also have an acute self-awareness. People who discover and find errors or negative experiences as a regular part of a life pattern are able to learn from them and move forward. And it also enhances your own self-confidence. Now you can we always have an expression, the glass is always half full, so you can take that both ways. You can either continue to fill your glass or you can let your glass run dry. And today we're going to talk about how we're going to continue to fill our glass and find the positive value of failure. And it all starts with our own self-confidence. Now, here are a few questions that I've just sort of put up there. The fact that, do you act in a way that's governed by other people's opinions? So are you someone that will look at take on board what someone else says and act only because that person is telling you to act that way? And as a result, it always keeps you in a comfort zone because there is no room to fail. Do you fear making a mistake and then covering them up before anyone finds out? Do you feel you need constant recognition for your successes to feel validated or important in your life? Or do you find it really hard to accept compliments? And that all comes back to our own self-confidence, which is a part of finding ourselves. We really need to have acute self-awareness. Now, confidence. Confidence is generally boosted when we experience a win or receive a praise around something that we often do. It then takes a hit when our efforts fall short of the mark, we're criticized, we're rejected, or feel that lack of recognition. And often we want to feel very proud and feel a sense of positive recognition around something that we might do at work or something we might do at home. And we don't often receive that, and it tends to really knock your confidence at times. So I believe it's critical not to become reliant on external recognition or affirmation, and develop your own self-confidence actions to sustain a more consistent approach. So, for example, I used to, and sometimes I still do, really look at my boss or my leader in the organization and take everything on board. When I am criticized, it really hits. I feel quite humiliated. And I go through a range of other feelings, and usually they're expressed in different ways. Often I'll just be quiet. I will show no emotion. I'll take that on board. But inside me, internally, my self-confidence has crippled immensely. I used to not like people criticizing me for the work that I did. And often at times, I just didn't understand why they would do that. And it'd be over something quite small. And I'd be often like, but I'm trying to do the right thing. Can't you see that I'm doing a great thing? Where is the positive value? I might be doing something probably not in the direction or how you would have actually carried through on the particular activity the same way, but I still completed a task and had even better results. So why am I getting negative feedback for this particular action? And often you find when people start to govern that particular critical emotion, it comes back to a insecurity of that particular individual, the ability to not communicate, an ego that you're dealing with. And then on the other hand, it also comes back to us taking responsibility for them not communicating. Perhaps they're busy people. Perhaps we're always a yes person. Perhaps we are constantly only trying to please the organization and not looking at pleasing ourselves and looking at the direction we want to go and focusing on our ultimate outcome. So when it comes to our daily actions and how we interact with different people, our confidence is something that we really need to protect. People are often become driven by a fear of losing what they already have or the ground, and the opportunity in most times is lost. And when I say about taking a risk, failure is a part of a risk, and failure in terms of how you interpret that, the ability to not achieve something or the desired outcome or the result that you were hoping for, is a part of the educational process. And once we start to condition our brain that failure is okay and it's the only way to move forward, it makes us more resilient in how we approach things. Then how do we start to deal with our confidence on that level as well? So failure and self-confidence come part and part. So here are a few tips on that I've put together on how we can start to work towards building a stronger confidence in ourselves in order to really embrace failure moving forward. You need to find out your own, how you hold yourself. So, imagine yourself, you're going into a team meeting, you've made some error, everyone knows about it, but you still think you've done the right thing, and you always feel like you have to justify yourself. Well, end of story. How do you hold yourself? Body language becomes really important. So putting a smile on your face, your chin up, your back is flat, standing tall, and just shifting your own physical state and how you hold yourself, as opposed to walking in quiet, slightly hunched, no expression, is also a way of lacking confidence. And people are drawn to that negative energy, the way you feel, and then they continue to, unfortunately, passive-aggressively pick on that particular way of how you hold yourself. So definitely look at how you every day go to work and hold yourself on a physical state. I think it's really important how you walk around, how you interact, and really owning yourself, really being self-assured that you're very good at what you do and this is not going to let you down. Focusing on what you want. When you start to feel a lack of confidence, really hone in on inspirational actions and what you want to, that you need to do in order to achieve a positive outcome. By focusing on positive thoughts, it also helps you focus on what you want. So every day, reminding yourself of your dream, of what you're there, why you wake up every day and do the same thing. Is it because you have what is your ultimate outcome? And when you start to focus on this positive thought process, confidence is natural. By mentally rehearsing and visualizing, it really gives you a conditioned thought process and a belief that the possibilities will enhance your emotions, and confidence is one of those things that will naturally enhance with that particular rehearsal. I also say start with smaller wins. It might not be in an area that you work with. It could be somewhere else. But starting to work in a different, understanding your habits and making sure you don't get in a habituated state, and challenging yourself to do things that are extraordinary and having smaller wins is another way of improving your confidence. and associating yourself with positive people. Now, if you're one of those people that everyone goes to dump their problems on, then that's automatically going to bring you down. And whilst you want to feel really good to help a particular individual, you can't help everyone. And if you're trying to give positive feedback and the person's not taking that on board, then there's nothing you can do but help refer them to a professional. So by associating yourself with positive people, or people that are going to embrace what you say and listen, not just dumping and passing the buck, which I really don't like, you're going to become more optimistic and creative, and you're developing friendship groups that are non-judgmental, that don't hurt your own confidence. So in terms of confidence building, everyone does it a little bit differently, but most certainly not to rely on people giving you praise or recognition. It's something that you need to really do yourself in order to move forward and work with how you fail. I really love this particular statement. So in order for us to look at failure as a stepping stone to success, we have to then first overcome the fear of failure, which is often the fear of criticism. And of course, Thomas Edison, his most memorable invention was inventing the light bulb. And he reported that it took over 1,000 times before he was able to successfully develop a prototype. And he says, I didn't fail 1,000 times. It was an invention with 1,000 steps. So how you start to look at things not working is a conditioned response, and how you, one, feel about yourself and how you start to deal with failure personally, and starting to put in place a mechanism that is going to allow you to resolve and come up with a next action plan towards achieving a desired result. So overcoming the fear of failure, I find that in today's society, failure is not accepted. Every time somebody does something wrong, people are very critical and have an opinion. You see it online, you see it in all the marketing, on TV, radio. Every medium has this opportunity to really be critical of somebody else. And I find that very damaging, and in particular, teaching and educating our younger generation that failure has no room in somebody's professional development. I'm not sure if some of you also experience that, but I think teaching your kids failure is one step towards really building a strong, strategic-minded individual on how they, first of all, hold themselves and how they process not reaching the particular desired result. So when you're constantly surrounded by a competitive environment in particular, or people that just don't have, there is no other solution. You have to either do it this way or that's it. You can't do it at all. Then it really is a matter of installing a fear in people that you cannot fail. If you fail, you are the worst person on the planet. But I always come back to, what is the worst thing that can actually happen? So I always say we need to overcome this fear factor of not reaching our desired outcome. Instead of looking at it and being surrounded by negative personalities, how do we start to internally put in systems in our mindset to overcome, so people cannot damage who we are and where we aim to go? So remember, I always think, if someone's critical of me, I really think about it, think about what they say, and make sure they don't hurt my confidence and my passion to continue on my journey. I safeguard that by all means. At times I do beat myself up, but And it might be something so ridiculous, but that's more of a personal thing. That's not impressing somebody. And I also look at, is it their insecurity? These people that do criticize or push you into only meeting that next objective. Why? Because it's financial or whatever industry you're involved in. That what is the worst that can happen? So one thing, it's not personal. Don't take failure personally. It took me a long time, but I'm much better at mastering not being able to take failure personally. A lot can be learned, and the experiences that you make you become better and wiser. The lessons learned and the experience gained will serve you well in your future attempts. So it's really about educating yourself. In everything in our particular career, we have to accept failure. We have to be more, when we develop plans, we have to ensure failure is a part of that plan, because it means that we can look at other options and other strategies. So strategic thinking is a really great way to look at all different possible outcomes. But if you still don't reach your desired result, what else can we do? We go back, we repeat it, we revisit it, but it really creates an innovative thought process. Do not procrastinate. So sometimes people are so scared of not reaching a desired result that they don't do anything at all. And then they overthink it. And then they cannot sleep at nighttime, and then all sorts of damaging processes kick into gear. More than what not taking the action could possibly do. So I think it's normal to make a mistake. And then it's going to guide us on where we go next. So if you're a procrastinator and you overthink, think about that, what that's doing to your body internally and your health and your mental health. Can you go to sleep at nighttime? Is it always on your mind? Are you overthinking things? So just don't overthink. Just do it. Just be courageous and do it. And at the same time, take responsibility. Understand that you will make a mistake, but it's your mistake and it's yours to own. Embrace it and implement a new strategy. And if we look at what does positive failure look like and what are the advantages, I really believe that it makes people a better person. We are able to build empathy for people and living creatures because nothing is perfect. We learn lessons, so it really nurtures and trains our brain to improve our mental health. It strengthens our creativity. It helps us reevaluate and think about how to succeed next time. And it also puts in place humility, and that's something that took me a long, long time to understand and was the only thing that was holding me back. It helps us understand if we have an ego, and then deflates the brain and brings us back to a self-awareness, which helps us reevaluate why we take risks. So while we think that this is great, and I've done this a few times, and I've certainly reaped in all the positive rewards, I've actually failed, but I've been so scared of telling people that I haven't achieved what my desired outcome, original purpose was, because I was scared that my ego was going to be hurt. But I think that is normal human behavior, and I'm much better at my own self-confidence, understanding the skills, understanding what I offer, and knowing that not succeeding is not going to be the worst thing on the planet, that it's going to help me become a better person by reevaluating everything that I'm doing and looking at things differently. How do we work with failure? Well, we need to maintain a positive attitude. I mean, saying that you can't do it or finding excuses or we've done it this way for such a long time or I'm scared that I can't do this is all in the negative attitude space. It's an excuse to not embrace a positive behavior. So maintaining a positive attitude and being optimistic will help you see the lessons of the experience and will continue to push forward. So giving you the permission to maintain a positive attitude no matter where you are and what situation you are in, as opposed to finding an excuse. Now, if you're someone who finds an excuse, that's something that you need to start training. Okay, but what if, not what we used to do, and this is how it happened, and this was the outcome because somebody else implemented it. But what if I did it, and I did it this way and that way, and I've learned from that person's mistakes, and I think I've got a better way of doing it. What can we do? So maintaining a positive attitude towards all aspects and embracing other people's failures, learning from them and developing something that's creative and progressive is always a great way of moving forward. And I think by the power of positive thinking, reading motivational and inspiring materials. I don't watch TV. I haven't watched TV for the last 8 months. I'm now back in Australia. I still haven't got a TV in my house, and I don't want to have a TV. I find TV extremely depressing. The world has some extremely terrible things happening right now in our lives. And I can only take so much before I start to feel depressed. And so I much prefer to be reading my book and learning and developing myself and researching things that pertain to my job and where I'm going at the moment, as opposed to watching negative incidents happening across the world, along, with locally. I just don't want to be around that. So really it's really your own responsibility on what environment you place yourself. So I much prefer to be around inspiring people, friends that understand, friends that are encouraging, supportive, reading, and finding my own material that's going to keep me positive. And if you aim to be a leader at what you do, then you can't be surrounded by negativity all the time. It's just going to break you in the future. And most certainly, I've had those down moments. And I think if you're going to go down, you have to hit rock bottom before you can come back up and really understand what it is that you did wrong and how you can fix it. Depression is a natural emotion. And I think when we start to really embrace depression and what that means, it gives us a better understanding of how we go about things. So even using a depressive moment to become a positive action, and that's something that on a whole different level I've also had to embrace. Strengthen your self-awareness. So we talk about confidence as a part of the self-awareness process, but understanding your strengths and weaknesses, recognizing your emotions. So being realistic, being concerned, being curious, developing a keen sense of perception, developing the strength to see yourself as others see you, and maintaining optimum levels of humility and the confidence so that you can plan, develop, assess, and implement tasks. So what that actually means is really understanding what you're very good at and understanding the environment that you're about to put yourself in, and really doing a little bit of pre-research. And I know I'm working with a few of you on this as you start new careers or move forward into different spaces, but it really is about understanding your own personal triggers. If I'm about to walk into an audience and have to give a presentation, I want to know who the general audience is and who I'm going to be presenting to. Just a rough overview. Perhaps I need to not be so serious. Perhaps I need to be a little bit funny, also if I'm going into a team meeting, I need to understand what state of mind I'm in, what emotional state. So am I already depressed? Am I anxious? Am I motivated? These are all emotions that I need to understand and control. So when it comes back to risk-taking and failure, you've got to ask yourself a few questions. Why are you doing it? Coming back to basics is always a good thing. And if you can answer why you're doing it, then have you summarized the consequences, positive and negative? So can you strategically write down what the positive outcomes and negative outcomes might be? And then you need to ask yourself, what do you have to lose? How often has this negative event happened to you before? And how often does this negative event happen to people in my situation? So by simply reminding myself of the unlikelihood of what I fear actually happening, my brain starts to focus on preparing for success. Asking yourself what you have to lose. If you move forward, what am I going to lose? So really thinking things through. And before you get to that point, it's really imperative that you understand your strengths and weaknesses. What are you bringing forward? What are you good at? What are you not so good at? And the confidence is a really great part of that plan, that you're confident that you're going to meet your desired objective at some point, whether it might be now or tomorrow or in the future. But what do you have to lose if you continue? If you really believe passionately that something will have to change, then something will change. And when you do fail, it's always good to go back and say, well, what did I learn? Because failure is actually education. And if you look at it, it's educating us that we need to look at things differently or do something a bit differently. And so what did you learn from your experience? What could have you done differently? What are your strengths and weaknesses? And do you need to acquire additional skills or strengthen the ones that you currently have? Who can you learn from and what resources are there available? Are you in the right niche? Are you doing, you trying to implement something that's not actually, they're not very interested in on a visionary side? Am I learning from my mistakes? Am I constantly pushing my own boundaries? And what do I do next? By answering those questions and reviewing what happened, you're then able to put in action plan number 2. And a lot of people always say to me, but I don't know if I can continue to do this. So it's really about believing in what you want to do and what you want to achieve. Of course, everything is hard work. Things don't get handed out on a plate anymore. The younger generation, I do believe that I've worked with, certainly feel that. They feel that everything has to be given to them, and the sense of work and pride of work is a different trained definition, what they get taught at school to what we experience in the field. And everything comes with hard work. And if you don't have the energy and if you don't believe that you can succeed at it, then you need to ask yourself if you can still do it. Or do you have to reevaluate and go back to a different strategy? Take a good hard look in the mirror and ask yourself if your passion and drive match up with your aspirations. Skills and know-how are less than half the battle. And if you don't believe you can do it, it'll be harder to convince anyone else that you can. You have to be your own cheerleader before you can expect anyone else to be. So going back to my personal tips, I definitely create my own plan, and I understand and own my risk, understand what I have to lose. So I really, put it in my head. So what is the worst that's going to happen? What will happen? What am I going to lose? I write down my experience or express them in a way in which I can refer to in the future. So I like to document. So for me, I like to document things. I like to take photos and surround myself with memories that if I'm working on a particular project, this went really well, but what didn't go so well. So for me, I'm quite a visual person. I use my failure as my strongest motivational tool. Now, that failure could also be a personal failure. It could be happening in my, for example, a very bad personal breakup. Like I said, I hit rock bottom at one stage a few years ago when I broke up with my partner, and never thought I'd get out of it, but it was my strongest motivator. It pushed me to become far more independent and realign back to what I wanted to do. And once I started to really recognize that what I and how I was behaving wasn't actually because I wanted to continue being with this individual, it was because of my own fear of having to be independent, of having to think only for myself again, not having somebody that can come along with for the journey. And that is okay. And it took me a long time, and it really motivated me to where I am today. I stick to my goals. I don't let others hijack me. So time managed, that comes back to your own time management, which we've discussed. I believe that when you want to catch up with friends or family, or they're asking you to, really working out the time, not allowing people to sort of throw me off course. And every day, I always give myself permission to fail. You know, I know that I'm going to walk into a new job and go, there is a lot I need to learn, and I'm not going to learn it in the first week. And I'm going to make mistakes, and I'm going to build this place a better place from these mistakes more than what they anticipate. So it's really that desire of knowing. I've got this photo of me. I'm actually in Mongolia here, sitting up on the second largest peak in Mongolia, overlooking China and Russia. It was right on the border in the Altai Mountains. And this photo really means a lot to me. It's one of my biggest successes. It was 4,100 meters, and I was absolutely terrified. I was never going to climb this mountain. And I was with a lady who is a mountaineer, and said, "Come on, you can do it." And I said, "No, I cannot. I'm terrified." And she's like, "So what are you actually scared of?" And I said, "Well, 8 years ago, I went to see the mountain gorillas in Uganda, and I thought I was bulletproof. And I thought that I could climb 3,500 meters without a problem and watch gorillas. But I was extremely sick with altitude sickness, and it was a real shock to my system. And what it did to me mentally was that I could never climb another mountain in my life that was above an altitude of 3,000 meters, that I could never aim or have those aspirations to go and visit different places that had high elevation levels, like in Peru, because I was so scared of being sick and feeling miserable. And this time I took altitude sickness tablets, but I still was absolutely scared. And anyway, I said, okay, well then I'll walk to the base of the mountain and we'll go from there. I'll see how I feel. Because I didn't want to disappoint her. I felt like she put a lot of pressure on me. Got to the mountain. I thought, oh, it's slate, rock. I can walk a bit up this. I'll go halfway and you go to the top, and I'll meet and come down and get me. So off we went, three of us. There was our guide, the travel writer, and they went ahead. And because I wasn't extremely fit at the time, and the altitude really, I could feel it. And I was probably an hour and a half behind, and I sat down and I looked at the view and I thought, well, I've made it halfway and I'm okay. The tablets are working. And if that girl who just came back from the top can do it, why the hell can I not do it? What is putting me back? I had a very bad experience with watching gorillas. And here I am watching all these young people go up and down, people that were not fit, nowhere near my fitness, were achieving going up this mountain. So it was more of a motivator watching others go up and down and just looking at me, that fear of someone going, that girl could only get halfway. And that was more a voice. And then I used that to go, well, actually you can do it. Don't let these demons overcome that fear and go back to your camp. So here I go, another hour and a half up the hill. And there I am sitting there. And nor did the guide or the lady ever think that I could do it, because I had convinced myself so strongly that I was not going to do it. I had already told myself there was not a possibility, and yet I made it. And I feel that really understanding your demons sometimes and what drives you to that is really quite damaging. And if you apply that to everything you do, then you're never going to get anywhere. You're only going to stay in your safe box, and you're not going to make any giant leaps. This particular moment was probably one of my most personal, proud moments I've ever experienced. And now I have booked to go to the Congo next year to see mountain gorillas and climb in Uganda as well again, so I can overcome that initial fear. So pushing yourself and setting yourself up to look at what went wrong and how you could do it better is always a positive thing. So I like to ask you all, how do you define failure? Everyone has a different interpretation. So it'd be interesting to see how you look at failure. My other question to you is, what is your number one tip to use failure and turn it into a positive action? And that is all I have on my webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. The recording.